ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys Star Wars The Clone Wars 1/6 scale figure unboxing and review video. Now today we are going to be taking a look, finally, at Ahsoka Tano. Honestly, a lot of people were speculating that this figure was never going to come out, but no, she's here and I couldn't be more excited. I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is of course in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. While you are down there, why not hit that subscribe and bell notification icon so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys review goes live on the channel. What we are going to do now though is get the box laying flat in the light box and do the unboxing. Here of course we have the box art, and it's done in the usual Hot Toys Star Wars style. An image of the figure herself front and center, another one down below on the wraparound banner, and say what you will about how simple this box art is, the blue and yellow down below provide a very nice pop of colour. I really like the way that looks. Another image of Ahsoka looking like an absolute badass on the side of the box, and then all of the legal information printed on the back. On the inside though is where we start to see the real artwork. Another image of Ahsoka with lightsabers ignited, and a ton of special effects. But we're not really here to dissect the box, we're more here to check out Ahsoka herself. Now, as I said in the intro, I'm super excited to finally get Ahsoka in hand. The wait has been long, but she is here. First in-hand impressions are actually pretty darn positive. I'm loving the look and feel. What we are going to do now though is get all of her accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything she comes with. Here we have all the parts and pieces, and for the most part I am pretty happy with the selection. Although I am left scratching my head at some decisions. We'll get into that though in just a second. Starting off with the display base first, it's the usual Hot Toys Venator style flooring. You do have some dirt and grime speckled onto the surface this time though, and I really like the way that looks. Ahsoka Tano on a gorgeous etched metal nameplate, and then a waist clamp up top. I know, Hot Toys are big fans of using waist clamps for female figures. I'm not sure why, they're way more restrictive and very unsightly, where I think a crotch grabber would have worked perfectly fine here. I'll show you what I mean a little bit later in the video. You also get an outer cloak. There are a bunch of wires running through it, and it's perfectly shaped to sit on her noggin. I like the material it's made out of. It's thick but also quite lightweight at the same time, meaning it will hold its shape when you use the wires, but it also drapes quite naturally. You do have a little bit of texture that kind of looks like a diamond pattern on the surface. Don't worry, we will pop that on Ahsoka a little bit later in the video. You also get some of my favorite accessories, being the swooshing lightsaber blades. You get one small one and one that is much larger. They literally just peg in to the regular lightsaber hilts. Speaking of the hilts, you do get two different sizes. One much smaller and one a lot larger. They are both unique designs, they're not just shrunken down or upscale versions of one another, and I do love the metal pitting on the surface. They have a nice silver metallic finish, and they look like they would be made of metal, but unfortunately they aren't. Hopefully, with new companies like InArt making die-cast accessories, Hot Toys going forward starts to do the same. You can of course remove the blades from the hilts. Now there's a really weird thing going on here when it comes to how to attach these lightsabers to Ahsoka's belt. There are these little clip sections that peg into the hilts. I'll explain how these work a little bit later in the video, but just know that I'm not a huge fan of it. You also get a thermal detonator with a little red dot up on top, and it is painted to look relatively realistic. There is also some detail on the front there. Now you do get a couple of new Jedi holograms. You all know I'm a big fan of effects, and I really like these. You get a Clone Wars version of Anakin, a little mini Yoda, and also Obi-Wan wearing his outer cloak. Now it does just peg into her comms device, and that can just be held in her hand. It's relatively straightforward, and it's painted very nicely. You also get a full array of hands. Well, almost. For some reason, she only comes with one closed fist. I'm never a big fan of when companies do this. Always, in my opinion, for just the regular poses like neutral open palm hands and closed fists, include two of them, one for either side. It just makes sense. The skin texture and the detail on the back of the armor plating, though, is on point. You also get this piece. It's a little Hot Toys branded pry tool that you'll use to move her eyes. That will come into play a little bit later on. What we are going to do now, though, is get Ahsoka herself out here and take a closer look. Here we have her standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that, and I am so very happy. This figure turned out great. Now I do still have a couple of things that I want to get off my chest. She's not perfect. The accessories were a little bit perplexing, and how some of the mechanics work also are rather puzzling. But at the end of the day, this is an absolutely gorgeous version of Ahsoka based off Season 7. This is my favourite look for the character. Now I know it's not going to float everyone's boat. Some people prefer the Season 1, 2, 3 onwards version of Snips, and I totally understand. Maybe sometime down the line Hot Toys will make that version. But for me, this is the one I was looking forward to, and I'm super pleased to report that, yeah, I love this figure. What we are going to do now, though, is take her off the rotating turntable, punch in, and take a closer look at the details. Here we have her up close and personal. Now in just a second we will pop on the poncho and move the eyes into a different position just to show off how versatile this head sculpt truly is. Now speaking of the head sculpt, we may as well start there. I personally really like it. It is significantly different from the prototype. I definitely don't think it's worse. In fact, I think it's actually a step up. I can absolutely see a young Rosario Dawson in this head sculpt, which I'm pretty sure is what they were going for. Even though the skin is orange, there is some skin texture there. The way the face markings are painted on, you can see a subtle translucency to them, and the lips are a nice, full and vibrant red. Plus, she does have this faceplate tiara piece up top that is nicely painted and weathered with some pitting on the surface. And then of course we get to the Leku. They are quite big and cumbersome, and you'll see how they impact articulation a little bit later in the video. Now as for the outfit, it's relatively simple. It does like to bunch up at the front and back, so I found simply pulling this skirt piece down on both of those sections will help straighten out most of the wrinkles. Now it is just one piece of synthetic fabric, and it's not pleather. All of these silver lines are screen printed onto the surface, so I don't have any worries about this cracking or creasing or even degrading over time. They've used that very same material under the gauntlets, so these black straps aren't actually making any contact with the seamless arms, so you shouldn't have any staining there. Speaking of the seamless arms, I personally would have been totally fine if they'd added the joints here just like they did with Endor Princess Leia, but I know this is a much cleaner look. The skin texture has come a long way on seamless arms, from back in the day where they literally looked like shapeless sausages, they now actually look like arms. There's some definition, and there is also a little bit of speckling over the top. Plus, when you bend them, they do crease in a very realistic way. Kind of like you'd expect from real human skin. So for those of you worried about creasing, look down at your own elbows, and trust me, you will also have some creases. It'll be totally natural. Now, one thing that I'm not a huge fan of is how the lightsabers attach to the belt. They are just begging to break off. They peg into these really small little pegs on her hips, and I'm pretty sure this one is literally about to go. If I swivel it anymore, that peg is going to break. On the other side, it pegs in a lot more freely, but it literally is a super tiny little piece of plastic. This is a stupid decision. Hot Toys, please use magnets for stuff like this going forward, because now, in order to remove this lightsaber, that peg is going to be broken off and stuck in the hilt. Now, the belt itself actually looks really good, and all of the armor is fully weathered. You do have actual fabric pieces that are stitched together holding the side pieces on, but I'm not sure why just the belt is weathered. The armor pieces look great, there is detail, there's the communicator on the outside, but the outfit is super clean. There should be some weathering and pitting here and there, and maybe even just a little bit of shading, but the rest of it all the way down to the legs is just pristine brand new. It might not bother you, but that's something that I definitely have noticed. Then coming down to her shin and knee armor, it's also significantly weathered, and it has a little bit of a metallic sheen to it. Unfortunately though, they have used the tried and true pleather Star Wars boots. Some people have had issues and they've cracked over time. Others, like me, have been really lucky and haven't had any issues at all. So fingers crossed they do stand the test of time. And then of course, underneath, you do have a little bit of texture for the heel, and even some stitching around the sole. But for those of you wondering what she looks like with the poncho on, here we have it. Now, I personally never intended on displaying my Ahsoka wearing this cloak, but now that I've seen it, I am very tempted to do just that. I regret not picking up two Ahsokas because this cloak looks really cool. I like how it's form-fitted to the horns up the top of her head there, and that there is a wire around the front so you can shape it. You also have a wire running around the edge so you can get it billowing off in the wind. Now I have some good news. For those wondering, is the clip safe? Is it alright? Yes it is. I was able to heat up the lightsaber and it was able to be removed from the clip with no breakages. But that will be the last time I ever try and peg it on there. I'm still not a huge fan of the way they've designed that. As for the head sculpt, with the eyes moved off to the side, it gives you a completely different look. As I said, this head sculpt is very versatile, and I'm one of those crazy collectors that think that, yeah, every figure should have moving eyes. Now for a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have Ahsoka alongside Captain Rex. And is anyone else getting flashbacks to Season 7 of the Clone Wars, which just happens to be my personal favourite season of the show? These two look great together. I was expecting Ahsoka to be a lot shorter than she is. I guess I just have in my mind that she's this little Padawan from the early seasons of the Clone Wars. But she isn't. She's a total badass, and as you can see, she's relatively tall, stacked up alongside Captain Rex. Now, he still is ultimately taller, so this makes sense. But in the display, I cannot wait to have Clone Wars Anakin, Ahsoka, hopefully at some point a Clone Wars version of Obi-Wan, Commander Cody, and Captain Rex all lined up. That's my vision for the display, and I reckon it's gonna look Pretty awesome. Next up, here we have the Revenge of the Sith version of Anakin, which is technically accurate to Season 7 of the Clone Wars as it leads right into Revenge of the Sith. Nevertheless, these two look great together. Anakin is significantly taller than Snips, which I'm fine with. Hayden Christensen is a relatively tall dude. Now, he is also taller than Rex, so you are going to have multiple different heights at play, so there will be variety. And I'm a huge fan of that. Having everyone standing at exactly the same height would look a little bit goofy. Nevertheless, let me know which version of Anakin you'll be stacking up alongside your Ahsoka. For me, I'm currently torn between this version or the Clone Wars one. Just going over articulation. Now, bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. I'm sure when you get yours in hand, you can push the joints slightly further than I am willing to go. Now, starting off with the head sculpt, it's on a ball joint at the base of the head and another at the base of the neck. But I'm sure to absolutely nobody's surprise, the Leku are going to hinder the range of motion. Looking forward and back just a little, swivel and pivot side to side. Now, seeing as though the arms are pegged in separately to the body, they do have a fairly decent range up, going forward and back, and of course a butterfly joint at the shoulder. You do have a single bend at the elbow that the instructions say can get to 110 degrees, but mine for some reason stops at 90, and I'm not going to push that any further. You do also have a swivel at that very same joint, plus a regular 1/6 scale wrist peg. The torso will crunch forward and back, swivel and pivot side to side. The legs will go forward to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, a ratcheted double bend at the knee that goes the full way, and of course a double ball peg down here for the ankle. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is how rough some of the edges are on the outfit. It seems as though this is just a single layer of material and Hot Toys just literally cut it with a pair of scissors. You can see some jagged edges. This isn't really what I'd expect from Hot Toys. Usually they'll have a double layered piece that's been stitched and hemmed nicely, so something like this wouldn't be an issue. The second annoying thing isn't really an annoying thing for me. I can totally get around it, but I've seen some people complain that you can very clearly see the mold line where the 2 parts of the arm are fused together. These are supposed to be seamless, and some people are complaining that, yeah, you can totally see a seam. The third annoying thing is featured in the instruction manual. It's so cumbersome that I just gave up trying to show it off on camera because the pieces are so darn tiny. To attach the lightsabers to the belt, they didn't use something simple like magnets. They have a bunch of these tiny little bits and pieces and clips that have to be removed and pegged into place. This, for me, is a miss. They should have gone with magnets and not overcomplicated with these tiny little pieces. For one bonus annoying thing, I thought I'd bring out the display base. I mentioned earlier that I think a crotch grabber would have worked perfectly fine, and lo and behold, it absolutely does. I don't know why they insist on going with these waist grabbers that would be way more visible, when characters like Ahsoka that have a skirt that the crotch grabber can actually tuck up under, it would look way more seamless. The first cool thing I discovered after removing Ahsoka's head sculpt to adjust her eyes, which we'll get to in a second. You can very clearly see some air holes in the back of her Leku. That means they are wired and posable. It's not something that's mentioned in the instruction manual, so I didn't really expect to see it, but this should help just a little with posability. The second cool thing is that, of course, you can move her eyes. Hot Toys include this little tool, and when you remove the faceplate, you can then manipulate the eyes independently. That means you can make her look all kinds of goofy and cross-eyed if you so choose, or you can angle them off to the side to give her a little bit more personality with your posing. The third cool thing is that we do get some brand new mini Jedi holograms. We've of course got Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Clone Wars Anakin, complete with his Clone Wars armor. I'm a huge fan of these mini effects. They are very Star Wars, and I personally am glad that we keep getting them. Just wrapping up on Ahsoka Tano, based off her appearance in the Clone Wars. Now, going into this, I told y'all I was really excited. We've all been waiting for a very long time for this figure to finally release. And now that she's here, can I honestly say she lives up to the hype? For me, yeah, she definitely does. She's a really strong release. Is she perfect? No. Did Hot Toys make a bunch of weird and questionable decisions? Yes, I'm still not sure why they went with that stupid clip system rather than just doing magnets. We've seen them use magnets for lightsaber hilts before, like with Yoda, which made perfect sense. You don't have to worry about breaking any tiny little pieces. That would have been the way to go. I'm not a fan of doing things that could potentially result in breakage just by using them in the way that they were intended. So Hot Toys, please, going forward, make sure you double and triple check decisions like that. Pretty much everything else though, I'm on board with. The accessories are on point. You'll know I love my effect pieces, and those swooshing lightsaber blades are a very nice touch. Another thing that's a nice touch is that they updated the head sculpt to look more like Rosario Dawson, and they added moving eyes. I love being able to pose the eyes, because the head sculpt is kind of difficult to contend with because of the Leku. The eyes add a ton of variety to your posing options. You don't have to move the head as much left and right because you can articulate the eyes. This is something that I still attest every Hot Toys figure should have because it adds so much personality and versatility. Now I am sitting here hoping we do get more Clone Wars characters, but only time will tell. For now, this Ahsoka figure is absolutely a welcomed addition to the collection. If you are looking to grab one, I got mine from toyswonderland.com. Link for that is in the description below. They have 12-month installment plans and an awesome reward system. While you are down there, why not check out the link to 6 Scale Network, the Facebook group. Come along, chat figures, share photos of your collection, and of course, see what's coming up next on the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.